How do you define a budget build in 2026? Is it just by the amount of money you paid, or is there some minimum of games that you want to play? This build that I'm going to be putting together today on Amazon, it's going to work out to about $700, but it will play everything, and at HD, it'll do it quite well. Games like God of War Ragnarok, as you can see, 60 FPS, can be had for under $1,000. So the parts that I've chosen are budget parts, but they will do a job. So let's take a look at those. First up here, you can save a lot of money by going with combos. So on Amazon, sometimes you'll find combos like these, and usually they represent quite a good value. So this one is $170 for a Ryzen 5500 with an ASRock A520M motherboard. Now this is AM4, so it is last generation, but with the current pricing of things and with the fact that this is meant to be an entry-level budget gaming PC, but it can play new games because it is ray tracing enabled. And I'll show you which card we're going to take just now. You've probably seen in the video already. But this is gaming capable. If you want to spend a little bit more, you could go for a better motherboard like this one from ASRock, but I've chosen the cheaper one. It's also an ASRock board, the A520M board, and this one is, the board itself is nothing amazing, but it does have an NVMe slot. It has 2 DIMMs, and for a budget setup, this is fine. You don't really need more than this. One thing that I like about it is the small PCI slot that you put your accessory cards in, like Wi-Fi cards, is above the 16-lane slot. And so the 4-lane slot is then capable of having something above the card, whereas if you had to put it under the card, sometimes the card is too big and then there's no space to put like a Wi-Fi card. Because I like to put Wi-Fi cards in builds like these because I usually put them at the TV because it's like a console sort of thing. But we've gone with the Ryzen 5500, and it is a 6-core CPU. It's relatively low power draw, 12 threads. It comes with a Rave cooler, which is more than enough for it. I have chosen another cooler that you can add, but you don't have to because the Rave cooler is good enough. Not too much to say on this. Gaming wise, it still gets relatively decent performance in almost any game. It's a relatively powerful CPU, and you know, just for gaming, it's going to do the job, especially at 1080p. Now you'll notice that this combo doesn't come with RAM, and there's obviously a reason for that, and we all know the reason. It's the RAM apocalypse, right? It's not a good time for RAM, but the prices have started to come down a bit on DDR4. You're looking at $100 for 16 gigs of Alloy DDR4 RAM. This is relatively good RAM. I've used this before. It's not the fastest. It is only 2666, but it's okay for gaming. It's fine for the type of gaming that you would be doing on a system like this. And this is 16 gigs, which is the sweet spot for a PC like this. I think this RAM is fine, but just go for what's the cheapest. But in this point in time, $100 is not bad. You could get, for if you're okay with just using 8 gigs, but then it would be single channel, which you don't recommend on DDR4. You could get an 8 gig stick temporarily. Moving on to the other part that is a problem. This NVMe drive is actually relatively cheap. This is a slow drive, relatively speaking. It's a 512 gig drive, so it's not the biggest, but it's also not the smallest. You can load a couple of games onto this, and if you're okay with just having 5 to 10 games at a time, this will be fine. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but for gaming, it's going to be fine. You're still going to have relatively quick load times. 2,200 megabytes per second read on this one. There is an option to take the 3,500 megabyte one, but for the extra money, I just don't think it's worth it. So not an amazing choice, but it's going to do the job, and it's going to be good enough for this system, this budget system. The star of the show, of course, the graphics card. Now, graphics cards are in a weird place because you can either buy a 5050, a 5060, a 5070. Those are all like above $300, right? So it's, and the 5050 is like $350. So it's more than $100 more than this. And it's a much better card. Don't get me wrong, it's way better. But it just doesn't fit into this budget. I would probably honestly not go for something like this at this point in time because it makes more sense to save up the extra $150 and get even a 5050. It's just so much better than this. But if you are hard locked at that 200 to 250 price point, this is going to be okay. It's going to be fine for HD gaming. It is a 256-bit bus width card, which is pretty good. It does have GDDR6, so relatively new there. It does offer ray tracing. And it has 8 gigs of VRAM, so it's not the fastest thing in the world, but there's not going to be anything that you can't play, which is okay. At HD you'll get decent frame rates, so not the best thing in the world. The ratings are quite good on this one. Not the best brand in the world. One thing that I will say is find out more about the warranties that a company like whatever this company is, obviously not a very reputable one, find out more about their warranties before you buy from them, because you don't want to buy something and then it breaks a couple of months in and you're left with no warranty. And that's why I say save up the extra $150, get a RTX 5050 or 5060 from a reputable company. But again, if you're hard locked to this budget, this will be okay. If you do want to get a custom cooler, which you don't need to when you're going AM4 because you get coolers with the CPUs, but this is a good choice at $26. And I did reckon it into the price, but if you don't get this, just get like a Wi-Fi card. That's what I would do. And it's going to be about the same price for a relatively good Wi-Fi card. So, either or. But this is a very, very nice CPU cooler for the price. I just wanted to kind of show the CPU cooler because it's a great price. Now the case. The case is very subjective, right? Because people have different tastes. I like this kind of thing. I like a very small case, a chassis that can go inside a cabinet or on top of it. I like the new form factor of having sort of like a maxi ITX kind of thing. So it's like mini ATX stuff, right? That's kind of the in thing right now. But I really like the aesthetic. This one, obviously, you can see it's a little bit of a cheap case. It's not going to be the most premium materials or anything. But, at this price point, it's going to be fine. And here they show you can go micro ATX. You can go relatively big on the CPU cooler. But if you're just taking the stock cooler, you'll be fine. It does have 4 PCI breakout slots there. You'll probably only need to break out 2 or 3 if you do have that Wi-Fi. And it doesn't come with any fans, so you might have to grab a fan, but you can get a fan for like $5, especially if you're not taking the CPU cooler. Just grab a fan. And yeah, I like this kind of thing. It looks basic, but I like the simplicity of it. But this is up to you. There's so many choices. This Cooler Master Box is a great choice. It's very cheap as well. It's actually cheaper than this, or it's a little bit more expensive, but something like this, you can't go wrong either. This is a bit more reputable. It is Cooler Master, and I've used this case before multiple times. It is quite nice. I enjoy building in it, and it's also quite small. I like the shape of it. So there are options. Choose what you like. You don't have to get anything small either. If you like a big case that sits under your desk, on top of your desk, that's fine. That's what I have over here. But if it's like a console equivalent thing, I like to, make it a bit smaller, personally. Power-wise, you don't need anything fancy. You could even go with the 500 watt, but the 600 watt is just a couple of bucks more, so it makes sense to go for that. Technically, we could even fit the 700 watt into the budget, but even if you do upgrade this to like a 5050 or 5060, the 600 watt is going to be fine. You could go gold rated. That's going to be a bit more expensive, a lot more expensive, and that's then the 850 watt. But these parts aren't really that power hungry, and Thermaltake make relatively reputable power supplies anyway. This is not anything fancy, but it's going to do the job. It's going to be fine. So all in all, the PC comes out to $688, but that's if you take the CPU cooler. Again, if you don't take this, take a fan, take a Wi-Fi card, or just don't take anything. Save a bit of money, make it a $650 PC. But yeah, it's going to be around $688 for this build, which is, I don't want to say it's cheap because these are aging parts at this point in time, but they will supply you with a gaming experience. And this card is the entry-level RTX card, but still, it will play games. So to prove that, let's take a look. Now, I haven't screened these tests because I wanted to see what this would be like with you, right? So this is God of War Ragnarok 1080p high settings with DLSS set to quality. It is getting about 60 FPS, which is, for a build like this, you know, let's be realistic, that's what you're going to aim for. You're not going to worry about getting high refresh rate sort of quality on a system like this. It looks very smooth. The frame times are really good. 1% lows are quite high, so looks like a good result. Not much to complain about. The temperatures are going to be low because it's low power draw components. It's just a nice little gaming PC at the end of the day. GTA 5 Enhanced, not a difficult game to run anymore. Gonna get about 80 FPS on very high. Of course, no upscaling, but it's just, this game is so old it's not necessary anymore. And a good result. Arc Raiders, a relatively new game. You are looking at 1080p high settings, ray tracing high, DLAA. It looks nice, I have to say. And you're getting above 50 FPS, and that's on a new game, right? Like, this is a game that just came out a couple of months ago, so that's very impressive. Another new game where winds meet, 61 FPS, 1080p high quality. Relatively good looking game, but nothing to write home about. Assassin's Creed Shadows, another AAA, relatively decent recent game. 1080p medium settings, DLSS quality, and we are looking at just under 50 FPS. I would still play like this. I think anything under 45 to 40 is getting a bit low, but for a console equivalent system you would still play like this. And it is medium settings, 1080p. Just don't expect 2K out of this PC, that's just a bridge too far. 60 FPS on Ghost of Tsushima, 1080p high settings with TAA enabled. The new Dying Light game, 60 FPS, 1080p medium settings, DLSS set to quality. So, you know, DLSS is going to do a lot of heavy lifting with a card like this, but it's definitely playable. And having that extra 2 gigs of RAM, because this is the VRAM, this is the 8 gig one, it's going to help. The previous Forza game, Horizon 5, we're looking at 1080p ultra settings, no upscaling, 75 FPS. That's not too bad. An average of 73 over there. Yeah, it looks nice. It's going to be a nice experience. Cyberpunk, a game that's a bit old at this point, but still, you know, benchmark worthy. 1080p high settings, no upscaling, no ray tracing. Looking at about 60 FPS average. It's not a bad result, and it still looks really nice. Battlefield 6, another recent game. Running at relatively good settings here, running at 1080p medium, DLAA enabled, and we are looking at about 65 FPS average. That's not too bad. It's a very recent game and it's a good looking game. Fortnite, PC like this, you're going to want to play Fortnite, let's be honest. 82 average, 1080p epic settings, nanites off, TAA enabled. Looks quite nice, not too sharp, but not too bad. And you are getting a 82 FPS average, which is very respectable. Not going to get a lot of lag on this, and very smooth frame times. Doom the Dark Ages. Now, this is an example of a recent game that requires ray tracing, and that's where this card wins, right? Because it has ray tracing. So this is the entry point into playing the newest games. You're not going to get high refresh rate, but you'll play them. So 1080p low settings, the DLSS quality, and we're looking at an average of 53 FPS at this point. I'm going to say between 50 and 60. You know, it's playable. It doesn't look too bad, it doesn't look amazing, but it's playable. So if you do care about playing games like the newest Doom or Indiana Jones, you know, this card will be able to do that. Last of Us Part 2, remastered, 1080p medium, DLAA, average of 55. I'm actually quite impressed with this card, to be honest. I mean, this is a $700, not even, $650 PC, and it's playing these games at, you know, what I consider to be just the normal refresh rate, right? Like 60 hertz is, for most TVs, that's the standard. So if you do use this as like a little gaming console PC, you know, 1080p is maybe going to look a bit stretched, but if you sit a little bit away from the TV, it's not going to be too bad. You know, you don't have to pay thousands of dollars to get a good gaming experience, contrary to what people think. Silent Hill F, the newest one, or the second newest one, 1080p performance, TAA, average of 48, and this looks nice. Black Myth Wukong, difficult to run, 1080p medium, DLAA, average of 53. So, look, the PC is impressing me, I'll be honest. It's not an expensive PC, and these games are very playable. Counter-Strike obviously is going to be playable. You're looking at 138 average, 1080p, very high. Not much to say there, but esports not going to be a problem. Red Dead Redemption 2, average of 65, 1080p high, TAA enabled. So that's pretty impressive. Yeah, I keep saying what I would do is I would just use a normal TV, play at 1K, set a little bit further away, and just use this next to my PS5. Horizon Forbidden West, 1080p medium, DLAA enabled, and an average of 59. Not a bad result, a very nice looking game. Lastly, I'll do Hogwarts here, 64 average, 1080p high, DLSS set to quality. So yeah, it's playable, doesn't look bad. I'll say it again, the PC has surprised and impressed me. Going through the parts, you know, just a standard small mini ATX kind of motherboard. Not too many features, but it does have NVMe and it does have 2 DIMM slots. So we put 16 gigs of relatively slow but functional Oloy DDR4 RAM in there, 2666 megahertz, but you know, it's going to be fine for this kind of thing. We have a Ryzen 5 5500, 6-core 12-thread, not the best CPU in the world, but for gaming, even now, very capable. We have a standard NVMe Gen 3, not the fastest thing in the world, but you know, for loading games and saving data, it's going to be fine, let's be honest. We've got a entry-level RTX 2060 8GB. It's going to play your games at 60 FPS, at 1080p. You might have to do some upscaling, but it's going to play your games. Cooling wise, you could go for the extra cooler that I showed you. You could go for a fan. You could, you know, there's a few things you could try. You could buy a case that comes with fans. You can put a Wi-Fi card in it, and these things are not going to be super expensive. Case wise, just pick what you like. You know, no one can tell you what case to get. Just avoid ones with bad ratings, really. Cases are not very expensive, and most of them are pretty good these days. So just choose what you like, but just make sure that the form factor works. So basically, just don't take an ITX one. Just go ATX, mini ATX, and up. And then lastly, the power supply, just a normal. If you want to go 500 watt, that's going to be fine. If you want to go 700 watt, future-proof, that's going to be fine. But just go for around $50. It'll be fine enough. But just don't take a brand that you don't recognize, or something that you've heard is not the best, because it's going to be fine for this, but maybe one day you'll want to upgrade the CPU to like a 5800X 3D, right? Which I guess you wouldn't do that on this motherboard, but you could. And the graphics card, maybe you put a 2080 in there, and then, you know, you need a lot more power. So you could be mindful and go future-proof, but you really don't have to. To end the video here, I'm very impressed. It did better than what I thought it would. Like, this game is very new, and you're going to be playing at about 55 FPS average. It's really not bad. And, you know, none of the games had to go to the lowest settings either, so that's also very impressive. I'm very impressed by this. What do you think for $700? Would you go different? Would you consider maybe an Intel card? And consider these are new parts, right? This is not a second-hand build guide. This is an Amazon new build guide for, you know, what's considered cheap now is $700, but it's a new build guide. It's not second-hand. Second-hand, you could save some money, but for a new part, what would you do? Would you go AMD? Would you go Intel? Would you go NVIDIA? Because NVIDIA is pretty expensive, but it is good. What CPU would you take? Would you maybe go Intel like 9th gen or 10th gen, something like that? Either way, I think this is impressive. I think something like this will work well, and I wouldn't be upset if I had to game on this PC. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.